Today, crypto prices are unfazed by new inflation data that bolsters hopes the Fed will cut rates in September. Goldman Sachs reports more than $400 million in Bitcoin ETF holdings in Q2, and Brian Estes with Off the Chain Capital explains how crypto is becoming more of a political issue as the upcoming U.S. presidential election approaches. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Talia Kaplan. Crypto prices holding steady this morning with Bitcoin trading around $59,400, Ether ticking up to $2,675, and Solana still holding steady at $146, all by noon Eastern. Crypto markets were quiet following the release of July inflation data this morning, which revealed that inflation slowed to 2.9% compared to a year ago. That's the lowest level since 2021. The data out this morning was in line with Wall Street expectations, driven by higher housing-related costs, and it likely keeps the Fed on track to cut rates next month. This was the second key inflation report out this week. Yesterday, we learned the producer price index came in cooler than expected. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Goldman Sachs just revealed it's holding more than $400 million in Bitcoin ETFs for clients. The investment bank filed its latest 13F yesterday. That's the quarterly report institutional investors are required to send to the SEC to disclose all of their U.S. holdings. In its second quarter report, Goldman disclosed just under $419 million in spot Bitcoin ETF holdings spread across 7 of the funds on the market. The largest holding was in BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin ETF, worth about $238.6 million. That was followed by Fidelity's FBTC fund at $79 million, Invesco and Galaxy's BTCO at $56 million, then Grayscale's GBTC at $35 million. The ARK21 Shares Bitcoin Fund was its smallest Bitcoin ETF holding at $300,000. Next, energy provider Talon Energy might be pivoting from crypto as it focuses on the growing electrical needs of AI. Talon reported second quarter earnings yesterday, and during the earnings call, CEO Mark McFarland emphasized how much data centers will play a role in the business going forward as the demand for power at high-powered computing sites grows. But when asked about the company's crypto aspirations, Farland said the company doesn't believe cryptocurrencies are a, quote, strategic asset. Talon previously partnered with crypto miner TeraWulf to run a nuclear-powered crypto mine in Pennsylvania, but Reuters reported back on August 1st that Talon is looking to sell its 75% stake in that mine. Talon's CEO declined to say on yesterday's call what the company was planning in terms of its crypto partnerships. Last, crypto speculator Chun Wang bought a SpaceX multi-day flight for a private polar spaceflight expedition. The company announced this week that Wang, who told CNBC that he has been interested in space from a young age, purchased the flight for an undisclosed amount. In the mission, dubbed Fram-2, Wang will lead a group on what would be the first crewed spaceflight in polar orbit. It will fly end-to-end over the Earth. He invited 3 Arctic specialists to join him, including an Australian explorer and guide, a Norwegian filmmaker, and a German researcher. Now, SpaceX does not advertise the price of its crewed missions. NASA, however, previously disclosed that a crewed mission could cost more than $200 million. Now, Wang confirms that he paid for the mission, but declined to specify how much. He has kept a low profile for the most part, and his unspecified net worth appears mostly, if not fully, tied to work mining crypto. SpaceX plans to launch the mission near the end of this year. All right, back to markets for our main story. With 2 key inflation reports out this week, I spoke with Brian Estes, the Chief Investment Officer of Off the Chain Capital, about the data's impact on crypto prices. He also weighs in on crypto's influence on the upcoming presidential election. I want to start off looking at markets because it has been a wild ride recently with that big sell-off last week, followed by some recovery. This week, Bitcoin traded back above $60,000, but this morning dropped to the $58,000 level and then bounced back above $59,000 as of noon amid 2 key inflation reports. Today, we learned that U.S. consumer prices rose 2.9% in July, pretty much in line with estimates. And yesterday, we saw that the producer price index came in less than expected. How do you think the macro environment is impacting crypto prices right now? And what do you think was behind crypto's moves last week?
Yeah, one of the things that spooked the market last week was that the U.S. government moved 30,000 Bitcoin from its custodian at Anchorage over to Coinbase. And people thought that the US government was going to start selling off some of that Bitcoin. And I think news just came out today, and I haven't verified it yet, but they sold 10,000 of that 30,000 Bitcoin. So that's what spooked the market last week, and that would, one of the reasons, it dropped so much last week.
And how is the macro environment this week impacting crypto prices, if at all?
Yeah, so when you look at Bitcoin, the macro view is that we're in what's called a megatrend, a mass adoption of Bitcoin as a new technology. This has been going on for the 15 years Bitcoin's been around. The trend isn't slowing down. So when you look at the macro view, Bitcoin adoption is actually growing faster than internet adoption did back in the 1990s. And this is a megatrend that is unstoppable. It's just like the adoption of cell phones or mobile internet or washing machines back in the 1940s and 50s. So it's, the macro trend is strong, and we think it will continue for the next 20 years until about 90% of the world has exposure to digital assets, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin.
So what's your outlook for Bitcoin by year end? Do you think we can surpass those highs we saw back in March where Bitcoin crossed $73,000? What would it take?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much in the bag. So where we're at is you look at what's called a halving cycle. So there's been 4 Bitcoin halvings since Bitcoin's been around. That's when the supply gets cut in half, the daily issuance of Bitcoin gets cut in half. That last halving was in April. So the 12 to 18 months after a halving is the best time to own Bitcoin, and that's when it goes up the most. The Plan B model shows that the future value of Bitcoin, according to that model, is at a minimum of $500,000 by October of next year, and it could be over $2 million if historical models like that are accurate.
So how much of a factor is the upcoming presidential election here in the U.S. on crypto prices? The Republican presidential nominee, Donald Trump, has come out in recent months as pro-crypto, and in May, his campaign started accepting donations in crypto. Of course, the former president was the keynote speaker at Bitcoin 2024 last month. On Monday, the Democratic National Convention kicks off, and it will be interesting to see if crypto is brought up at all. We recently learned that Harris's team is reaching out to crypto experts to learn more about the industry. In fact, speaking with us at Bitcoin Nashville a few weeks ago, Congressman Ro Khanna said he advised her team about digital assets. So I'm curious to get your take on how crypto is starting to impact this election cycle. How much influence do you think it can have on the upcoming presidential election?
I think it's going to have a huge influence. There are over 50 million people in the United States that own Bitcoin and digital assets. That's a huge voting bloc. So all those people are 18 or above, so they're voting age citizens. And so Kamala Harris, she hasn't come out with a plan yet. We expect that to be coming out soon after she talks to her advisors. But she can do things today. I mean, she could fire Gary Gensler. She would, come out and make public statements about her support of the industry, but that hasn't happened yet. As you mentioned, President Trump was in Nashville during the Bitcoin conference. A couple of the key points that he made was that he said he would not sell the approximate 200,000 Bitcoin the U.S. government currently owns. And then Senator Lummis from Wyoming came out and said she was going to sponsor a bill for the U.S. government to buy up to 1 million Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. And then, the biggest news I think that came out of that conference was Robert F. Kennedy, who's running as an independent. He mentioned that if he became president, he would buy up to 4 million Bitcoin, which is basically all the available supply of Bitcoin, which is called the float.
Now, you created and produced a new documentary called God Bless Bitcoin, which highlights the benefits of this cryptocurrency and why more Americans are turning to it as a form of financial planning. I understand the premiere was at Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville about 3 weeks ago. What inspired you to put together this documentary, and how is it being received?
Yeah, so in the first 3 weeks, we've had over 1.6 million views. We just went through this with our consultants yesterday. 92% of the comments have been positive. So I think it's been well received. Our goal is to have 1 billion people watch the movie. We're dubbing it in 7 different languages. So Mandarin, Hindi, French, German, and it's going to be distributed all over the world. And 85% of the native languages will be represented in the movie through the dubbing process. And so it's off to a good start. The reason we made the movie was to educate people on how our monetary system works. So about 100 years ago, Henry Ford has a great quote. He said that if people understood the monetary system, there would be a rebellion the next day. And so what we want to do is educate people on how our money works. And the number one reason we want to do that is because people are working more and more hours. They're taking second jobs. And a lot of people just can't keep up with their bills and maintain a decent standard of living. And the reason this is because our money is broken. If you go back 50 years ago when the Brady Bunch was around, you had one spouse working, one spouse at home, you had a live-in maid, you had 6 kids and a dog off one salary. And now people are working, both spouses are working, and people could barely afford to have one kid. And so the system this monetary system that we've been using for 50 years, which is called the fiat system, it's not working for a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world. And so the point of the movie is just to show people there is an option. There are other forms of money that are out there. One of them is Bitcoin, and you could just opt into that system if you choose to.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today, but we'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.